So, our first task will be weight transfer from foot to foot. I hope you downloaded the character. We will need to work with him. We don't open it directly. We use create reference. We create a character through a reference in order to be able to replace it, edit it, make changes in general, so that it is somehow so mobile. Create reference. Upload the character. Like that. I turn on texture mapping to make it look nicer, and turn on anti-aliasing. This smooths the boundaries of controls and geometries. Everything is getting smoother. These steps go away. These are the steps at the edges. You can come closer. You can see that they are stiff or softened here. So, I won't need certain body parts in this assignment, like 2 arms. I'm hiding them. I hide them in the following way. You can set 0.1 here, but it's long and inconvenient. It is easier to go into the attribute itself, not into the attribute value, but into the attribute itself, and with the middle mouse button in any part of the screen, left, right, we can disable an attribute or several attributes at once entirely. This is convenient when there are many different attributes. I won't need head, jetpack, and arms. We will work with legs, hip, and chest. We highlight all the controls and press S. This is how we create the key. Farther, I'm doing the first pose. Now the character is in a default position, originally created, and he is a little boring. Even a bit boring. And the boredom lies in this, in its parallelism, verticality, uniformity, and this geometricality. Therefore, the first thing I usually do is I spread my feet in different directions. It looks good. I will turn on the follow attribute here so that the knee follows the foot. If I turned it around, it would be easier for me to work with it. You wouldn't have to turn it over every time. So I move the legs, make them even a little bit symmetrical too. This already gives some more interesting silhouette. Next, I shift weight to one of the legs. Here you can use this balance plane, this tool that allows you to see where the weight of the character is now. This is the red dot, the red ball. This is the point where it comes. The green surface is the surface on which the weight is distributed. It proceeds from what pelvis is now, in fact. So, okay, we can move the character forward a little bit more to make it more balanced, so that this red ball stays more inside this surface. It seems to me that this is quite enough. Farther, what else can be done? To diversify and make more non-mathematical, not such a generic. You can turn the pelvis a little bit, for example. I will immediately disable bend control. This is the controls that bend legs. And I also won't need FK and IK foot switches, because I'll be working in IK foot mode all the time. Further, in the classical drawing there is such a concept of counterpost, when the chest and pelvis are oriented to each other at some angle. That is, if the pelvis is rotated by some amount, the chest is rotated by so much. It's not exactly the same angle, but it makes the chest a little more interesting. I will rotate it not only along the Z-axis, I will rotate it a little more along the Y, and a little bit along the X, so that this drawing is more interesting. I'll do the same with the hips. A little bit. I'll turn him around somehow. I don't know. Here's another one. So that he doesn't look at the camera like that, maybe even like this. Since we see the chest from below, we will see the pelvis a little from above. This will create a good and interesting silhouette. Here, my first pose is ready. I save the scene to avoid losing anything. It is very important, because May can fall. Fall. We can lose something. So I'll call it as weight shift. I always add anim to understand that this is an animation scene. There will be many scenes in the future. They can be with rig, with location, with cameras, with something else. It's so clear exactly what's going on. I'm adding V, version 001, so that when I save next time, it will be 002. Try to stay safe often. When some important moments happen, you have done something. It's a good idea to save just in case so nothing gets lost. Saving the scene. I'm saving it in MA format. May is Maya ASCII. It means a text file. Files can be text or binary. If you look at the file, you have the opportunity to view it through at least a notepad. That is, the whole scene is described in plain text. That is, in fact, it would be possible to assemble. If to be a mad professor, you could create an animation just by writing it all. This is difficult, of course, but theoretically possible. For us, this advantage is that if something goes wrong, we can do something with this scene later. Say that don't load the reference. Don't let's change the FPS of the scene, because everything here describes which camera was created, what size it has. If something went wrong, you can always roll back. It's a good tone to save scene in MA mode. MB, it's binary, it weighs less in size, but this is not a problem for us, because our animation scenes weigh very little. This is an advantage of references, among other things, because the robot itself, its size is 6 megabytes, and the scene into which it is loaded is only 128 kilobytes. That is, no matter how it is not in the scene, there is simply information that it is loading, and that animation curves are attached by some kind of control. So weight of MA file is not a problem for us. It already weighs little, but at the same time there is an opportunity to make changes if something suddenly went wrong. That's all? I saved the scene. I can start the animation, the next pose. Farther, I do not know how long it will take, but I will assume that, for example, there may be 30 frames. For 30 frames, he will shift weight from foot to foot. What am I doing? I shift my pelvis to the other leg. That is, in fact, I create a pose a little similar, a little symmetrical to what it was before. I lift the pelvis slightly so that the legs are straight. I also turn my chest slightly in the other direction. I want to make everything a little bit symmetrical. Like that. I was here. I stood in this direction. He turned around and shifted his weight. I don't need 200 frames. I'll probably make do with 50 frames. So, let's check it out. The character has shifted. Basically, this is already some kind of animation. Next, we will just follow the path of clarification. How to do this is a little more interesting, because he really carries weight. But so far, it is very linear, very homogeneous, and very boring. But the basic posing is there, everything works. Press Shift key and click on key on timeline to move it to 30 frame. It's not critical, it's just that we can talk about it too. Shift. I click on the timeline and shift it by 1 frame. In general, we don't work on the timeline very often, because it's not a very convenient tool for animation work. You see that there is a key. Yes, that is, for me, it is more such an information area than a working one. The working area for us animators is in the graph editor. Graph editor is a tool in which a visual representation of what is happening to a character takes place. I will key everything so that both poses are turned on, all controls, everything is turned on. So, what's going on? There is a smooth transition from one pose to another. Each of the controls is shifting. Let's say moving the pelvis from left to right. Here is this curve. It smoothly exits, accelerates, the maximum speed is somewhere in the middle and smoothly reaches, and all the controls are doing so now. Our task is to make it a little more diverse, so that there is no feeling that all the parts are moving at the same time. I'm creating an additional key here. Right-click, Insert Key, and the animation curve that you have selected now, an additional key will appear on it. It will also appear on the timeline. It is more convenient than keying everything on now, because all curves will have different timing. All will have different movement. It is implied that the area beyond which the event, for which the change is serious, is timing. This is the speed at which the event occurs. This is an important animation term. How exactly the change occurs. It could also be this, and linear, and whatever else. Even so. This is already a spacing. This is exactly how the changes between the two poses occur. This part is already called spacing. These are very important terms, because one determines how long an event takes. The second determines how the internal speed characteristics are in this movement. Let's get started. To get rid of this uniformity, I will have to do something faster, something slower. Therefore, I will take the pelvis and move it a little faster. That is, it will start moving faster and take longer to reach. This way it will have a slight acceleration. This will make the animation a little more interesting. She will have some kind of rhythmic pattern of movement. It'll move fast and get there. Okay, farther. What other important controls do we have? I probably would have taken care of chest control. So we have pose A, pose B. In the middle, we can do the following. We can make the chest lag a little bit. Now the chest is moving along with the pelvis. Therefore, we will have to do a counter animation. Add a key to the left-right movement, translate X, and move a little. At the time when the pelvis will move to the left, the chest will move to the right. As a result, we will get such an interesting lag effect. I will keep this lag effect for a while. That is, it will be smoother. Here, probably, to get here. Perhaps this driving turned out to be too noticeable against the background of the fact that the whole body has stopped and the chest is moving. Maybe I'll look for some more interesting solutions so that it doesn't take too much attention. I'll try to add more keys so that the refund is a little faster. Probably something like that. Anyway, we come to the conclusion that we will have something like this. I work with non-weighted tangents. Any curve can be switched at any point in the animation time. Doing non-weighted tangents, this is what I have now, is when the tangent only adjusts the curve at the expense of direction. There are also weighted tangents, when tangents have more weights. We can still reduce and increase them. It seems that it is more convenient at work because there is more control. But it also requires some kind of care and that everything is beautiful. I don't really like working with weight tangents. I use non-weighted tangents. By default, you will now have weighted tangents enabled in Maya. You need to, if you don't want to do this, you need to uncheck this box here. By default, Maya creates weighted tangents for whole new animation. We'll uncheck it. This is not a question of what is right or wrong, it is a question of some kind. To whom it is more convenient to draw this curve, in fact. Some kind of question? I don't know. Of the internal organization. So it's more convenient for me this way. I work with the non-weighted tangents. It's easier for me to control at the expense of just directions. There were also some animation curves. There was, for example, rotate Z, which tilted the pelvis to one side to the other. We will add a small gap and even such a small overlap here. When he starts moving forward, the chest will move back a little bit. This will be the effect. Boom. And we'll get there a little faster so that it's not too obvious that the chest is moving very brightly against the background of the pelvis. That's about it, I think. Like that. Not yet. Yes, something good is looming. Translate Y is there, but it doesn't do much. I'm not sure if he plays a big role. Although we can also, if we want, add something more interesting. We can stretch the chest a little bit while he starts. Add a little bit of this upward movement. And here, for example, to fall down, I just amplified this effect to see that there was such a squash stretch effect. A little bit, the pelvis and chest are so compressed and straightened. Not so much active, but I wanted to demonstrate the effect. In small doses, it will look very good. Some kind of liveness appears. Translates seem to be finished. Translate Z is the camera on us from us. That's why it's not even visible. You don't have to animate it. You can remove the animation, deleted the key. Rotate X, it's a slope. You can work with him too. Now the movement is just homogeneous. You can add some interesting movement. For example, to overdo it a little bit, to dive in the other direction here, to make such a small wave that he seemed to hit a little bit. Here, I also work specifically at very large amplitudes, amplifying the multiple effect in order to find just this timing to show that it is visible. When I find the timing, those keys, where they are, then it will be possible to clean up this whole effect a little so that it does not hurt the eye. That is, something happens in small doses, but at the same time I know that it is beautiful, just some kind of small secondary, small animation, so the chest is already moving, more interesting. Rotate it's a matter of turning around. About the fact that the chest rotates around its vertical axis. You can also add a little bit of this lag effect, that when he moves, the chest doesn't seem to have time a little bit. I'm going to enhance the effect so that it's noticeable, so that this is it. Boom. And then we can either do it simply, or make another wave. There, here. This is how we create this interesting drawing. In this case, in this exercise, I am working in Graph Editor. Basically, I'm such a spline-oriented animator. That is, I had poses, I put out the main key poses, everything else is easier for me to do on animation curves. This is the spline. We got a more interesting drawing. The chest is moving interestingly now. Please note that we seem to be working about weight transfer, but at the same time the animation is no longer even on the pelvis, but on what depends on it. Because the movement of the pelvis is usually very simple, there will be no super complicated plastering. What comes after the pelvis, what it affects, the chest, arms, head, everything that makes animation live will happen on them. Because the weight transfer was, well, postponed with the pelvis, it would be possible to experiment with squatting there. But I'm not really sure if it will look good. It will probably look a little weird. I don't know, though. Maybe also, again, in small doses. That is, to do a little bit and cut it, probably a squat at the beginning, like that. And he gets up quickly. These are the features of working with non-weighted tangents. It happens that there are not enough tangents to get the desired pattern. And we have to add other emotional keys to make this curve simpler. I like this squat a little bit. I'll turn it down like that, to work with a piece of an animation curve, for example. I also often use the region tool. It's this button here. It allows you to work with a curve, how to simply scale it in one of the directions. Yes, in this regard, by the way, this squat turned out to be fun. What else do we have left of the undone? From this automatic transition. This is hips, which is very, very linear. Not linear, but very monotonous. I probably need Rotate Z. I'm constantly pulling these curves to see what they're doing, to understand that I'm going to rule now. Here I will add, for example, a small dip. I'm thinking that right now he has weight on this leg, and that's why his pelvis is like this. But now the weight will start to shift, and I want to add some additional movement here. That's what happens to the knees. This is always a problem when working with IK legs. Knees that are likely to snap. But I'm not paying attention to it yet. I'm just busy with the pelvis. Yes, I like some kind of sudden movement in the pelvis. And I came back here. It turned out to be some kind of small one. A small movement is interesting in the pelvis. It might be a little fast. I'll slow it down a little bit, checking it out. Yeah. There is something in this. Something needs to be done with the legs, because the legs, which bend like this, then unbend quite sharply. Not the most successful animation option. I'm cheating. I'll just make the pelvis higher. So far, we are not climbing right into some kind of animation depth. In the future, we will deal with such topics. What should I do about it? How to deal with these popping knees? There is still such an anti-pop mode in the legs. This is what allows the leg to stretch slightly before it becomes straight. This gives a smoother movement. I deleted the Delete Selected Animation key to remove the animation. Otherwise, I would have to go through all the keys and deliver this 10. There are parameters that are not animated. Or you don't need to animate. For example, stretch, that the legs stretch. But there is no such effect that they should stretch. Then they should not stretch. Therefore, I can often remove some animation curves to animate on an attribute in order to get a more convenient effect. But it seems that this knee is twitching less now. That's cool. Here we got it. I'm just a little bit. This ride seemed to me too. That's it. It can be seen that it is linear, homogeneous. I'll speed it up a little more. So that later, in the end, the chest reaches and works more than the pelvis. Basically, the base is okay. I think it's fine. What is missing now in all our animation? There was not enough of a beginning. The animation immediately started just from the beginning of the shot, the first frame, and off she went. The viewer is not watching the video in a loop, he just turned it on. And he may not expect it. He needs time to figure out what's going on, who's in the frame, look around a little bit and understand a little bit about what. Therefore, I select all the controls, select all the animation curves here, and shift them by 10 frames. If I just move now, my character will break down. Because I'm not only moving the animation left-right, but I'm also randomly moving it up and down. It would be difficult to move, only here, to get so beautifully with a mouse or a pen. What are the solutions to just shift? Or hold down Shift and shift with the middle mouse button. This is one of the options. Or enable horizontal movement only here. And then there will be no vertical movement. The value of the attributes will not change, only their time will change, the time at which the change takes place. Only then return it back, because we will need to move the attributes vertically too. So, I got a pause of 10 frames, then a move of 10 frames, and a stop. Let's start with this first part. I can key all the controls, press the S button, to put down all the keys. What do I need these 10 frames for? In general, the pause is important. It is beautiful. It is pleasant to the viewer. He will be fine there. It's only half a second, even a little less. And it will have time for the viewer to grasp a little bit what is happening. But now it's absolutely static. I would like to keep some small micro movement and at the same time be inside this pose. So how can we do this, and what classical techniques will help us? In the 12 Principles of Disney Animation, there is one of the theses called anticipation. If my character is moving now, that's how the curve goes from top to bottom. That is, it moves from right to left. Then we can do just a little preparation shortly before he starts moving. That is, he first moves to the right, in order to then go to the left. And I will remove this static completely dead a little more. Just by lifting the key a little bit. I have an auto key here, and an automatic key like this. He drives a little bit, drives, then accelerates to go the other way. This will greatly improve the perception of movement. There are a lot of 60 frames. I'll set 45 here. I have a little animation. Yeah. This little preparatory movement works very well, but it will need to be done for all controls too. Moreover, it is not necessary that everyone will do the same thing now. The pelvis, for example, it makes a small movement to the right before going to the left. The chest may continue to lag, to be in this state all the time, to catch up. And, for example, I'll make sure that when he moves, his chest moves a little bit. There is a slight micro movement. When working with the graph editor, I often use vertical and horizontal scaling. This is a very convenient thing. If we just do a moving with the middle mouse button, we just pan. If we do it with the right mouse button, we will scale it, but it happens proportionally. If at the same time we hold down Alt and Shift and hold down the middle button, then a question mark arises. What do you want? And if you do up and down, then we will move, pan only vertically or horizontally. It all depends on where you are now after pressing Alt-Shift and starting to move. It also works for scales. If you hold down Alt-Shift with the right mouse button, there is also a question. If I move up and down, this vertical scaling occurs. This does not affect the animation in any way. It's just that such a microscope works. In order to hit the desired section of the animation curve and see how everything is going there. Yes, a little chest movement. I think it will work very well here. Then we get this small movement. It's better than a completely frozen animation. With hips, I'll also twist it a little bit here, so that there will be some movement. So everything seems to be fine. What happens next? Then there is a stop, and it may be abruptly. I will still expand the animation to 50 frames. I'll select all the animation controls, and I'll press S. This is the key. What is it for? In order to extend this movement, this pause a little bit. I'll take it. I'll move all the controls. These are the previous animation keys. How to create a little bit of a feeling of getting there. A little bit. Not quite. I just got there completely. And then a little bit. The character gets there for a while. We have a pause at the beginning. There is at the end. So that the viewer somehow has time, first, to get to know the character, and then somehow put a point for himself that everything, the event is over. That's it. There will be no more cartoons. Therefore, here we raise a little bit here. This is also a turnaround for us. The left-right shift. That's what happens to tangents. They give me this weird convex thing. You can carefully sum up everything here a little bit. And it doesn't matter that the ride was like this. That's right, that's it. Not just like that. So that eventually the character stops. And he's the shot ends with the character still moving. But it's just almost imperceptible. These are some very small things that we don't read directly, like with the eye. But when it's there, we're like, oh, it looks nice. This is from the category of some kind of unconscious here, natural micro movements. This is a micro trip, which is just like that if that's it. It gives a good effect. Translate X mainly works the chest. Rotate Z. Here's where I got a convex piece. Just a little. You can either omit this key or slightly adjust this one. As you wish. Both will work. Okay. There's a little linear movement here at the end. And with a tangent, I make a smoother entrance into this pose. According to the game too, this will make the stop smoother and more pleasing to the eye. In order not to move, he moved and stopped moving. It will be important to do this for all animation curves, including translates, rotates, and all the controls that I animated to make it all look beautiful. The pelvis. A little bit too. We're getting there. And the pelvis. which is responsible for rotation. I'll be lazy, it's just letting the key in. Let it all stop. Let it not be linear. I think there are just such small movements that it will be really unnoticeable. In principle, yes. It seems to me that you can hide the balance plane, you can close the graph editor, you can turn off the display of animation curves. All controls will be hidden, and somehow the cameras drive up. We are preparing to make our first Playblast. It seems okay. Right mouse button, Playblast. You can just make a Playblast, or you can go to the properties window of this Playblast. We need the following here. It is important for us to have Qt. If you don't have Qt, it's QuickTime, you need to go to the Apple page. If you type in QuickTime in the search engine, you will be sent to the official Apple website. They are the developers of this codec, the format. Download, install, and restart Maya. After that, you should have Qt. AVI will weigh a lot. And your small file in a few tens of seconds can weigh a gigabyte. It's a lot and it doesn't fit. QuickTime. And in its version, it is H264. Sayudain, we choose H264 encoding. The ideal such standard of the data transfer industry is between directors, animators. This is a very good format in the ratio of file size to image quality. It doesn't spoil quality much. At the same time, the size is quite good. Small. We set quality to 100. Select custom here and enter the dimensions 1280 by 720. This is the size of the future video. We leave the scale as 1. It can be 0.5. Probably we have it there. We don't need frame padding. It's for image. All. Perhaps I do not know. You have selected the Save to File checkbox. We need to select the file where we will save it. Choose where this file will be located. I'm saving the Playblast file to the same place where the Maya scenes are. And I'll call it the same thing. If I start typing in the name of weight, the name already appears that there is a .ma file there. I'm like, okay, but the file won't ma, and save it. That's it. Just in case, I'm saving. I'm making a Playblast. Here is your first assignment. We need to do a weight transfer. This is a very important thing, actually. The characters are constantly standing and shifting their weight from foot to foot, because it's hard to stand on 2 legs. We are standing on one, the other is resting, then we switch the weight distribution. And a lot of interesting things happen to the body. It happens in the chest, in the head, and in the hands. We are doing training now. A little later on this assignment, when we will talk about how to work with them and all these features. Therefore, save the scene and keep it safe. We will open it to this scene and add it gradually. First the head, then after a while we'll come back and add the arms. We will work in layers, in stages. It was pointless not to use it now, but there was nothing else. Pelvis and legs and chest along with them. Therefore, they are inextricably linked. Therefore, this is some kind of a single block. It was impossible not to do the chest, because the whole movement is, in fact, even in it. Here's the Playblast you need to make. And put it in a chat group. That's about it. You can start the task. Good luck.